Isabel Bennett stood at the threshold of her mother's hospital room, the weight of $1 million decision crushing her spirit, knowing that one night with a stranger could either save her mother's life or shatter her soul. Little did she know, the man offered her fortune would turn her world upside down, intertwining their fates in ways neither could foresee. Isabel Bennett stood in the sterile corridor of the hospital, gripping a stack of bills as if they were a death sentence. Her mother's room number, 407, loomed before her, a constant reminder of the crushing weight of her financial struggles. The total amount owed, $37,000, swam before her eyes, each digit pressing down on her chest like a leaden anchor. Miss Bennett. The hospital administrator's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts, pulling her back to reality. We need to discuss payment arrangements. Isabel straightened her waitress uniform, worn and frayed from the double shifts she had worked just hours earlier. I'll figure something out, she replied, her voice steadier than her trembling hand suggested. At 27, Isabel had perfected the art of appearing stronger than she felt. The relentless rain pounded against the hospital windows, matching the frantic rhythm of her heart. She had always managed to make it work. 2 jobs, minimal sleep, and a diet powered by coffee and sheer determination. Yet, staring at the staggering numbers, even her legendary stubbornness began to falter. The morning that changed everything started like any other, filled with exhaustion and black coffee. The Lucky Bean Cafe, where Isabel worked her morning shifts, provided a warm refuge against Manhattan's bitter wind. Steam rose from cups like whispers of hope, and the aroma of fresh pastries almost masked the desperation that clung to her bones. Double espresso, extra shot, she called out, her practiced customer service smile freezing as she looked up to see the man before her. He radiated power, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that likely cost more than her monthly rent. But what caught her attention were his eyes, steel gray and devoid of warmth. Name? She asked, her sharper poise over the cup. Daniel Harrington. He didn't even glance at her, too busy tapping on his phone with manicured fingers. Another rich executive who viewed service workers as mere background noise. $4.75, she announced, allowing a hint of sharpness to color her tone. Finally, he looked up, truly looked at her, and something shifted in those gray depths. You're new here. I'm not, Isabel replied, meeting his gaze steadily. I've been here 8 months. You just never noticed. A slight smile played at the corners of his mouth, as if he found her defiance amusing. Clearly an oversight on my part. He pulled out a sleek wallet, extracting a black card that screamed wealth. Let me make it up to you. Have dinner with me. Isabel's instincts screamed at her. She had encountered men like him before, men who believed everyone had a price tag. I don't think. Everyone has a price, Miss Bennett, he interrupted, reading her name tag. It's just a matter of finding the right number. He slid a business card closer to her, the offer hanging in the air like a challenge. $1 million. One night. The world around her seemed to tilt on its axis. Isabel's fingers gripped the counter until her knuckles turned white. Get out, she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and disbelief. Think about it, he replied, his tone infuriatingly calm. You look like someone who could use $1 million. She snatched the card, intending to tear it to shreds, but her hand betrayed her, slipping it into her pocket instead. Your espresso will be ready at the end of the counter, Mr. Harrington, she said, her voice cold as ice. Please don't come back. He left with his coffee, the bell above the door chiming his exit, while Isabel stood frozen, her heart pounding against her ribs. The weight of his card burned a hole in her pocket. She hated him for his assumption, his arrogance, and his ability to offer life-changing money as if it were pocket change. But most of all, she loathed that tiny voice inside her, whispering about hospital bills and her mother's fading chances, asking what she wouldn't do to save the only family she had left. As the morning rush continued, a blur of faces and orders, Isabel moved through it all on autopilot, her fingers brushing against the card in her pocket, a constant reminder of the devil's bargain lay before her. That night, in her cramped Queens apartment, she sat on her bed, staring at the business card. Daniel Harrington, CEO, Sterling Enterprises. His phone number was embossed in elegant script, each digit a temptation she couldn't quite shake. Beside her lay her mother's latest test results and a notice of final warning from the hospital's billing department. The experimental treatment that could save her mother's life felt like a distant dream, completely out of reach. Her phone sat heavy in her hand, the screen reflecting her torn expression. $1 million. One night, a simple equation with complex consequences. Her finger hovered over the keypad, trembling under the weight of her choice. In the end, it wasn't pride that broke her. It was hope. Hope for her mother. Hope for a future that didn't smell of coffee grounds and desperation. The phone rang 3 times before a smooth voice answered. "I knew you'd call." Isabel closed her eyes, a single tear trailing down her cheek. "I hate you," she whispered. "That's not a requirement," he replied, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "The Royalton Hotel tomorrow night at 8. I'll have a contract ready." She hung up, the phone slipping from her fingers and landing on the bed beside her. Outside, the city lights blurred through her tears, a kaleidoscope of broken dreams and desperate choices. Tomorrow, she would sell a piece of her soul to the devil in a tailored suit. But tonight, she would allow herself to mourn the girl she used to be, the one who believed she was priceless. Little did she know, Daniel Harrington sat in his penthouse office, staring at his own phone, wondering why her defiance thrilled him more than any business deal ever had. He had bought and sold companies worth billions, but something about Isabel Bennett's broken "I hate you" made him feel like he had just made the most dangerous investment of his life. The game was set, and the pieces were in motion. Neither of them understood the price they would pay, not in dollars, but in the currency of the heart. Isabel stood before the Royalton Hotel, its glass and steel facade looming like a monument to wealth and power. The clock on her phone read 8 o'clock, and as she caught her reflection in the revolving doors, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. Clad in a black dress she had splurged on, she felt both empowered and exposed, as if the fabric was armor against a decision she was about to make. If she was going to sell a piece of her soul, she would do it on her own terms. Inside, the lobby gleamed with old-world luxury, marble floors and crystal chandeliers, creating an atmosphere that made her feel like an imposter. Every click of her heels echoed off the walls, amplifying her anxiety. She approached the front desk, clearing her throat to steady her nerves. "I'm here to see Daniel Harrington." "Ah, Miss Bennett." The concierge greeted with a practiced smile. "Mr. Harrington is expecting you in the penthouse suite. Please follow me." The elevator ride was a solitary ascent, each floor passing like a countdown to a moment that felt increasingly irreversible. Isabel's phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from the hospital informing her that her mother's condition was stable for the time being. The reminder brought her resolve back into focus. When the penthouse door opened, she was met with a suite larger than her entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Manhattan's glittering skyline, but it was Daniel who commanded her attention. He stood by a leather armchair, drink in hand, his presence filling the room with an intensity that left her breathless. "Right on time," he said, his British accent wrapping around the words like silk. "I appreciate punctuality." Isabel's response was icy. "Let's skip the small talk. You mentioned the contract." A brief smile flickered across his lips as he gestured to the dining table, where a folder lay waiting. "Straight to business. I like that." He moved toward her, and she fought the instinct to step back. "Drink?" he offered, but she walked past him, her hand steady as she approached the table. She opened a folder and scanned the contract inside, the paper heavy with consequence, each clause more clinical than the last. "You do this often?" The question slipped out before she could rein it in. "Not really," he replied, a hint of sincerity in his tone that made her turn to face him. His gray eyes were searching, and for a moment, she sensed a flicker of something genuine. "You're the first." "I don't believe you." He shrugged, an elegant gesture amidst the tension. "Believe what you like. The money will be transferred before anything happens. You can walk away at any point." Isabel let out a brittle laugh, disbelief dripping from her words. "How generous of you." As she returned her gaze to the contract, she could feel Daniel's presence looming behind her, close enough that she could sense his warmth. "There's something else you should know," he said, his tone shifting. "What? More clauses about my silence?" She shot back, her voice sharp with sarcasm. "No," he insisted, moving around the table to meet her gaze. "I want you to understand that this isn't about power or control." "Then what is it about, Mr. Harrington?" "Love. Connection." His expression hardened, and Isabel felt her defenses building. "You're joking." He stepped closer, the air between them crackling with tension. "Sign it or walk away. But stop pretending you're here against your will." Her hand trembled as she picked up the pen again, the weight of it feeling heavier than lead. Each stroke of her signature across the bottom of the pages felt like she was sealing her fate. When she finished, she straightened, meeting his gaze with newfound resolve. "There, you owe me for the next 12 hours. I hope it's worth your $1 million. Daniel took the contract, his fingers brushing against hers in a way that sent shivers down her spine. "Check your phone." Isabel pulled it out, and there it was, a notification from her bank. 7 figures. Just like that. The sight made her dizzy. "Now," he said, his voice lowered into a tone that sent a thrill through her. "I don't own you, Isabel, but I do intend to possess you completely." She felt her heart race, a mixture of excitement and apprehension coursing through her. The bathroom, a slight frown creased his brow. Through there. Isabel grabbed her purse and practically fled to the sanctuary of the marble and chrome bathroom. Gazing at her reflection in the oversized mirror, she splashed cold water on her face, trying to calm the storm of emotions swirling within her. Her phone still displayed the bank notification, and with trembling fingers, she initiated a transfer to the hospital's account. The confirmation came instantly, and the knowledge should have brought relief. Instead, tears threatened to spill over, and she blinked them away, refusing to cry in front of him. Outside, she could hear Daniel moving around the suite, the clink of glasses and the soft sound of music beginning to play. He was setting the stage for whatever fantasy he had purchased. Isabel steadied herself, checking her reflection one last time. The woman staring back was familiar yet foreign. Same green eyes, same determined set to her jaw, but something fundamental had shifted. She had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. Taking a deep breath, she opened the bathroom door. Daniel stood by the windows, his jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. He turned at the sound of her heels on the hardwood floor. "Better?" he asked, his tone almost gentle. "Don't," she replied, crossing the room to him, close enough to catch the scent of his expensive cologne. "Don't pretend to care. This is a transaction, remember?" His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone, and she felt an involuntary shiver run through her. "What if I want more than that?" "You can't buy more than that," she whispered, even as her body leaned into his touch. "We'll see." His other hand slid around her waist, pulling her closer. "Now, about that possession I mentioned." His lips claimed hers with an urgency that shocked them both. In that moment, Isabel realized she had been wrong. This wasn't just a transaction. It was an inferno, and they were both about to burn. Outside the penthouse windows, New York City sparkled like a sea of stars, indifferent to the drama unfolding within. Two souls tangled in a web of desire and defiance, poised to discover that some things, the most dangerous, devastating things, couldn't be bought at any price. The morning after the night that changed everything, Isabel woke up in her tiny apartment, a whirlwind of emotions swirling within her. The first rays of sunlight crept through her window, illuminating the remnants of her decision. She could still feel Daniel's warmth against her skin, the memory of his touch igniting both desire and confusion. Yet as the sunlight pierced the haze of the previous night, reality set in. Isabel's heart raced as she recalled the contract she had signed, the $1 million arrangement that had felt both exhilarating and terrifying. She had exchanged a piece of herself for her mother's treatment, but what had she truly gained? The weight of her choice pressed down on her, heavy and suffocating. In the quiet of her apartment, the gravity of that night settled like dust on her heart. As she prepared for her shift at the Lucky Bean, Isabel couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Each customer who entered seemed to carry a judgment in their eyes, a silent understanding of her transaction with Daniel. She forced herself to smile, her practiced demeanor masking the turmoil inside. But beneath the surface, anxiety gnawed at her. What if someone discovered the truth? "Hey, you look like you've seen a ghost," Ruby, her co-worker and closest friend, remarked as she restocked the pastry case. "Rough night." Isabel forced a smile, stirring her coffee. "Just tired. Mom's starting the new treatment today." "That's amazing news." Ruby's dark eyes softened with concern. "You found a way to pay for it?" Isabel hesitated, the truth lingering on her lips like a bitter pill. "Yeah, I found a way." The words tasted like ash, a reminder of the desperate choice she had made. "Girls spill." Ruby urged, leaning closer. "Did you rob a bank or win a lottery?" Before Isabel could respond, the cafe door swung open, letting in a gust of cold air and a man who made her blood freeze. It wasn't Daniel, but his business partner, Richard Sterling, whose face she recognized from the Sterling Enterprises website during her late-night research. "Welcome to Lucky Bean," Ruby called out, her tone cheerful. But Richard's attention was solely on Isabel. "Miss Bennett," he said, his smile lacking sincerity. "Might I have a word?" Isabel's heart raced, a sense of foreboding washing over her. "I'm working," she replied, trying to maintain her composure. "It's about Daniel and your arrangement." His voice dropped on the last word, but Ruby's raised eyebrows told Isabel that she had heard. "Take your break, Ruby," Isabel whispered, her heart pounding. "I've got this." With reluctance, Isabel untied her apron and followed Richard to a corner table, dread coiling in her stomach. He sat casually, exuding the arrogance of someone who commanded rooms. "I'll be brief," he said, straightening his Italian silk tie. "Daniel seems to have forgotten our little wager in the wake of your encounter." The word wager hit Isabel like a physical blow. "What are you talking about?" Richard's smile widened, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "Oh, he didn't tell you?" "We had a friendly bet about whether he could convince someone. Someone with principles. Someone who'd normally never consider such an arrangement. To spend the night with him. For the right price, of course." The cafe seemed to tilt sideways as realization crashed over her. Isabel's nails dug into her palms beneath the table. "You're lying." "Am I?" He pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages before placing it before her. There it is, in black and white, a conversation between him and me from 2 weeks ago. The bet, the challenge, your name. $1 million was his idea. Isabel stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Get out." "Gladly," he said, sliding a business card across the table. "But first, if you're interested in another arrangement, my offer would be considerably higher than Daniel's. After all, you've proven your flexibility." The slap echoed to the cafe as Isabel's hand connected with Richard's cheek, leaving a red mark blooming on his face. The few morning customers fell silent, their eyes wide with shock. "Keep your money," Isabel spat. "And tell Daniel he can go to hell." She stormed past a wide-eyed Ruby and into the back room, making it to the employee bathroom before the tears came. Sobs racked her body, the full weight of her humiliation crashing over her. Not just a transaction, but a bet, a game. The night that had meant nothing to them had meant everything to her. Sitting on the bathroom floor, she felt the despair engulfing her. When her phone buzzed, she saw Daniel's name on the screen, and an urge to scream welled up inside her. Instead, she blocked his number with trembling fingers. Back in the cafe, Ruby was waiting with concern etched on her face. "Want to tell me what that was about?" Isabel wiped her eyes, trying to regain her composure. "No." "Yes. I don't know. Start with why you just slapped one of New York's most powerful venture capitalists. Because he deserved it," Isabel exclaimed, anger bubbling to the surface. "Remember when I said I found a way to pay for Mom's treatment?" Understanding dawned in Ruby's eyes. "Oh, honey, what did you do?" The story poured out between fresh tears. The offer, the contract, the night that felt like a dream and yet had shattered her sense of worth. Ruby listened without judgment, her hand gripping Isabel's tightly. "I'll kill them both," she declared when Isabel finished, fury igniting her voice. "Rich bastards playing games with people's lives." The worst part, Isabel said bitterly, is for a moment I actually thought he cared. Isabel, Ruby said gently, the money's been paid. Your mom's getting treatment. That's what matters. But right now, I feel like I sold more than just one night. The cafe door chimed again, announcing Daniel's arrival. He stood in the doorway, his usual composed appearance slightly disheveled, as if he had rushed over. Isabel, his voice carried across the cafe, heavy with urgency. We need to talk. Ruby stepped between them, her protective instincts flaring. She's not available. Ever. Let me explain, Daniel pleaded. Isabel squared her shoulders, using anger as armor. Explain what? The bet? How much you won by getting the poor waitress to sell herself? Daniel flinched at her words, pain flickering across his features. It wasn't like that. Really? She shot back, stepping closer, the scent of his cologne mixing with her rising anger. Because your friend Richard just told me exactly what it was like. He took a step back, his expression hardening. You must understand, Isabel. I never laughed. What happened between us was not just a transaction. Congratulations, Mr. Harrington, she said coldly. You won your bet. Now get out of my cafe. This isn't over, he said, his voice low and intense. But Isabel turned away, feeling the weight of finality in her words. Some things really are priceless, Daniel. She shot back, her heart pounding. Like dignity, trust. Maybe next time, bet on those. He stood there for a long moment, something like regret flickering in his eyes, before he turned and left, the door closing behind him with finality that echoed in the silence of the cafe. Ruby wrapped her arm around Isabel's shoulders. You okay? No, Isabel admitted, watching the window as Daniel's car pulled away. But I will be. The rest of her shift passed in a blur, the cafe filled with customers whose faces felt like reminders of what she had lost. When she finally made it to the hospital, her mother was glowing with the news about starting treatment. Isabel sat beside her bed, holding her hand, trying to find comfort in the knowledge that at least some good had come from all this. You look troubled, sweetheart, her mother said, brushing Isabel's hair back as she had done when she was little. I'm fine, Mom, just tired. You know what your father used to say? Her mother continued. The heart knows its own price. I never really understood that until now. Isabel's throat tightened. What do you mean? Whatever burden you're carrying, whatever price you paid, I see it in your eyes. But remember, no debt of love comes with interest. It's already paid in full. Tears spilled over, but this time they felt cleansing. Her mother held her while she cried, offering the unconditional love that no amount of money could buy. Across town, Daniel stood in his office, staring at the contract on his desk. With deliberate movements, he fed it into the shredder, watching as the paper that had bound them for one night turned to confetti. But the real bonds, those that neither of them had anticipated, couldn't be so easily destroyed. Daniel Harrington hadn't touched a drink in 3 days, but his office still felt like it was spinning, the weight of his choices pressing down on him. You look terrible, Richard commented, leaning against the doorframe of Daniel's office. Still brooding over the waitress? Daniel's grip tightened on his pen. Get out. Come on, Danny. It was just a bet. She got her $1,000,000. We got our entertainment. Everyone wins. The pen snapped in Daniel's hand, ink staining his fingers like blood. You had no right to tell her. Someone had to. Richard shot back, straightening his tie, the gesture grating on Daniel's nerves. You were getting involved. It was embarrassing. Embarrassing. Daniel stood slowly, fury coursing through him. You want to know what's embarrassing, Richard? That I let you convince me to treat someone's life like a game. That I actually believed I could justify it as anything other than cruelty. Oh, please, Richard rolled his eyes. She's fine. Probably shopping for a designer wardrobe with your money right now. The sound of Daniel's fist hitting his desk made Richard jump. The money went straight to her medical treatment. Every penny. But you knew that, didn't you? Richard hesitated, discomfort flickering across his face. It was business. No, Daniel shot back. It was personal. You couldn't stand that I was actually feeling something real. After Richard left, Daniel sank back into his chair, his head in his hands. On his computer screen, an email from his private investigator displayed photos of Isabel at the hospital with her mother. They were smiling, hope evident in their faces. He should feel good about that at least. Instead, the knowledge twisted in his gut like a knife. Days turned into weeks, and as the bustling life of New York City continued around her, Isabel found herself grappling with the aftermath of that fateful night. The initial exhilaration of her decision, the thrill of stepping into a world beyond her own, had faded into a complex mix of confusion and regret. Each time she entered the Lucky Bean Cafe, she felt the weight of judgment in the air, as if the walls themselves whispered the secrets of her choices. Isabel had made the transaction for her mother's medical treatment, but the emotional cost was becoming harder to bear. The $1 million had secured her mother's care, but it also left Isabel feeling exposed, as if she had traded a part of her dignity for the price of hope. She often replayed the moments with Daniel in her mind, the heat of their connection, the thrill of his touch, alongside the harsh reality of their circumstances. It was a juxtaposition that haunted her. One evening, as Isabel prepared for a shift, her phone buzzed with a familiar notification. Daniel's name glowed on the screen, and her heart raced. She hesitated, recalling the pain of their last encounter. Instead of answering, she set her phone down, unwilling to confront the emotions he stirred within her. "Isabel," Ruby called, breaking her reverie as she entered the cafe. "You have to see this." She held up a tablet displaying the latest business news. Isabel's stomach dropped as she read the headline. Sterling Enterprises split, the $1 million bet that changed everything. The article detailed Daniel's fallout with Richard, exposing the wager that had begun it all. Isabel felt the heat rise in her cheeks as she read further, the narrative painting her as an unnamed waitress, a pawn in a game between billionaires. "Is this really happening?" Isabel whispered, her voice trembling. "Damn, girl, this is huge." Ruby exclaimed, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You're at the center of it all." "No, I'm not," Isabel replied, feeling the walls close in around her. "Not like this." Before she could process the implications, her phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Daniel. "I'm on my way. Please let me explain." "Isabel, you need to talk to him," Ruby urged, concern etched on her face. "No," Isabel shot back, shaking her head. "I can't. Not now." But as the door swung open and Daniel stepped inside, his expression was one of urgency and desperation. He looked more disheveled than usual, his tailored suit unable to mask the turmoil beneath. "Isabel," he called, his voice cutting through the cafe's ambient noise. "Not here," she replied, her heart racing as she motioned toward the back door. 5 minutes. In the alley, they stepped outside, the cold air hitting Isabel like a slap. Rain began to fall, blurring the world around them. "Listen, I know this looks bad," Daniel started, his voice raw with emotion. "But I need you to understand." "Understand what?" Isabel challenged, crossing her arms. "That you turned my life into a spectacle? That I'm now the punchline to a cruel joke?" "No, that's not it," Daniel insisted, stepping closer, the distance between them charged with tension. "Richard leaked it. He's trying to damage the company's reputation before the final split. Did you know?" Isabel's voice trembled with anger. "Did you know this could happen?" "God, no," Daniel replied, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I thought I had contained it. The legal team was supposed to stop it. Shouldn't you have warned me?" Isabel's heart ached, the betrayal cutting deeper than she expected. "I should have," he admitted, his eyes filled with regret. "And I'm sorry. I never meant for you to be dragged into this." Isabel felt the sting of tears threatening to spill over. "Do you have any idea what it feels like to have your lowest moment splashed across the internet? To be reduced to a waitress who sold herself for $1 million? You're so much more than that," he argued, his voice intense. "You're not just a transaction." "Am I?" She shot back, the hurt in her voice undeniable. "Because right now all I feel is cheap, exposed, like everything we built was just damage control." "That's not true." Daniel stepped closer, desperation etched in his features. What we have is real. Is it? Isabel felt the weight of her decisions pressing down on her. Or is it just another transaction? Paying for my forgiveness instead of my body? The rain began to pour more heavily, soaking them both, and Daniel's expression softened. I love you, he said simply, the words hanging in the air between them. I can't do this right now, Isabel whispered, stepping back as tears mingled with the raindrops on her face. I need time to think. Isabel, please, he pleaded, reaching out for her hand. Don't let Richard win. Don't let the past destroy our future. I need time, she repeated, her voice firm but her heart wavering, to process everything. Then how much time? He asked, his eyes searching hers for answers. I don't know, she admitted, feeling the distance between them growing. Then at least let me be here for you, he said softly, his hand dropping to his side. I'll wait for as long as it takes. As Isabel turned to head back inside, she felt his gaze on her, filled with longing and regret. I love you too, Daniel, she whispered, barely audible above the rain. But that makes this so much harder. Back in the cafe, Ruby watched with concern as Isabel returned, her heart heavy with unresolved feelings. Isabel forced a smile, but inside, she felt a storm brewing. The following days were a blur of customers' orders, an undercurrent of tension that refused to dissipate. Each time the door chimed, Isabel's heart would leap, expecting to see Daniel's tall figure. But he didn't come. As the weekend approached, she received another message from Daniel. I'm here when you're ready. But what did that mean? Could she truly reconcile the man she had shared a night with and the one who had turned her life into a headline? Isabel threw herself into her work, burying herself in the rhythm of the cafe. Ruby was a constant support, always ready with a kind word or a shoulder to cry on. Girl, you can't let this ruin your life, Ruby reminded her one day as they cleaned up after the lunch rush. You've got to take control. I know, Isabel replied, the weight of her choices pressing down on her. But it's hard to move on when everything reminds me of him. Ruby placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You're stronger than this. Your mom's getting better. Because of you, focus on that. And so Isabel tried. She focused on her mother's recovery, on the hope that blossomed within the hospital walls. But the shadows of her past lingered, a constant reminder of the choices she made for love and survival. Meanwhile, Daniel sat in his penthouse office, staring at the contract that had changed everything. He could still feel Isabel's presence, the warmth of her touch, the fire of her spirit. With a heavy heart, he resolved to make things right, to prove that he could be more than just a man who made a careless bet. As dawn approached, two souls lay awake in different parts of the city, wrestling with the realization that some prices were too high and some feelings couldn't be bought or sold at any cost. The charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum was an event Isabel never imagined she would attend, let alone as a guest speaker. When Dr. Chen invited her to share her mother's success story, she felt a mix of pride and anxiety. The experimental treatment had made a remarkable difference in her mother's health, and Isabel was eager to advocate for the program that had given them hope. Yet, the thought of facing a room full of wealthy donors and influential figures made her heart race. As she stood before the mirror in her borrowed evening gown, Isabel barely recognized the woman staring back at her. The deep blue silk made her look elegant, almost regal, and Ruby had insisted on doing her makeup, transforming her usual appearance into something sophisticated. You look amazing, Ruby declared, adjusting the dress's neckline. Those rich snobs won't know what hit them. Isabel managed a small smile, but her nerves churned in her stomach. I just have to get through this speech without throwing up. You'll be fine, Ruby assured her, squeezing her shoulder. Just remember, you're not there as anyone's property. You're there as a survivor, a daughter, a warrior. The word struck deeper than Ruby could know. Isabel took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. The taxi ride to the Met felt surreal, the grandeur of the museum illuminated against the evening sky. As she entered, the opulence of the venue enveloped her. Elegant figures in formal wear ascended the steps like modern royalty, and Isabel felt a pang of insecurity as she joined them, her footsteps echoing in the vast entrance hall. Miss Bennet, Dr. Chin greeted her, resplendent in a red gown. "I'm so glad you made it. Come, I want you to meet some people." The next hour was a whirl of introductions, doctors, researchers, philanthropists, all eager to hear about her mother's journey. Isabel spoke passionately about the impact of the treatment, watching his eyes widen with interest and checkbooks emerged. It felt good to turn her pain into purpose, to use her voice to advocate for others in need. Then, through the crowd, she spotted him, Daniel Harrington. He stood across the room in a sharp black tuxedo, engaged in conversation with a group of investors. A wave of emotions washed over her as their eyes met. And for a moment, the world around them faded away. Daniel started to move toward her, but was intercepted by another group of guests. Isabel used the opportunity to slip away, seeking refuge on a quiet balcony that overlooked the city. The cool evening air felt like a balm against her racing heart, and she gazed out at the sprawling metropolis, the twinkling lights reflecting the chaos in her mind. Running away again? A familiar voice broke through her thoughts. Isabel turned to see Daniel standing a few feet away, his expression earnest yet cautious. "Not running," she replied, crossing her arms defensively. "Just breathing." He stepped closer, but maintained a respectful distance. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice sincere. "Don't," she warned, feeling the familiar tug of attraction mixed with anger. "It's just an observation." Daniel leaned against the railing, his gaze focused on the city below. "I didn't know you'd be speaking tonight." "Likewise," she replied, her heart pounding as she fought against complex emotions swirling within her. "Anonymous donor?" she asked. Tried to keep her tone casual, but the question hung heavy in the air. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I didn't want to complicate things by throwing more money at the situation. By trying to prove something?" Isabel challenged, her voice sharper than she intended. He turned to face her fully, and she was struck by the vulnerability in his expression. "No, this isn't about you or us," he said. "It's about doing something that matters." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard, and for a brief moment, she felt herself wavering. Why the change of heart? "Because of you," he replied simply. "You showed me that success without soul is just elaborate failure." Isabel's carefully constructed walls trembled at his words. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not trying to ask for that," he said, running a hand through his hair, a surprisingly vulnerable gesture. "I need you to know that meeting you changed everything." "I have to go," Isabel whispered, the weight of his confession hanging in the air. "Have dinner with me," he urged, his voice low and earnest. "Not tonight, not tomorrow, but when you're ready." Isabel hesitated, torn between desire to reconnect and the fear of opening old wounds. "Think about it," he said softly, taking a step back to give her space. "That's all I'm asking." As Isabel walked back inside, her mind raced with conflicting emotions. She was there to share her mother's story, yet all she could think about was Daniel and the complicated history they shared. When her turn arrived to speak, she stepped onto the podium, her heart pounding in her chest. She took a deep breath and began to share her mother's journey, recounting the challenges they faced and the miracle of modern medicine that had given them hope. With every word, Isabel felt stronger, the audience captivated by her story. She glanced at Daniel in the crowd, and their eyes locked once more. In that moment, she felt a flicker of connection that transcended their complicated past. The applause that followed her speech was thunderous, and as she stepped down from the podium, she felt a rush of exhilaration. Isabel had turned her pain into a message of hope, and the experience had helped her find her voice. Later that evening, she found herself back on the balcony, the city lights shimmering like stars. Daniel joined her, his presence both comforting and electrifying. "You were incredible," he said, his admiration evident. "Thank you," Isabel replied, the exhilaration of her speech still coursing through her. "I want to be part of that change," he said, his eyes searching hers. "I want to help." Isabel felt a surge of hope, a possibility, that perhaps they could create something meaningful together. "You're already doing that," she said softly. In that moment, surrounded by the glittering lights of the city, Isabel realized that they were both on a journey of transformation. They had faced their demons, and now, perhaps, they could move forward together. As the night wore on, Isabel felt the weight of her past beginning to lift, replaced by the promise of new beginnings. There was still much to navigate, but for the first time in a long while, she felt hopeful about the future. And in that hope, she found the courage to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead.